My name is Mary Conquest. I'm your host for Safety Labs, the podcast where we explore the human side of safety to support safety professionals. We move past regulations and reportables to talk about the core skills of safety leadership: empathy, influence, trust, rapport. In other words, the soft skills that help you do the hard stuff. This podcast is created by Safety Products Global, the world's leading manufacturer of safety knives. Through our trusted brands, Clever, Slice, and PHC, we empower companies to prevent injuries by providing safer cutting tools for every material and application. Hi there. Welcome to Safety Labs. Have you ever heard of Niklas Luhmann? Nor had I, until recently. He's not well known outside Germany, and today's guest believes that's a shame, because Luhmann's pioneering work in sociology has insightful contributions to make in many different disciplines, including workplace safety. We'll be discussing our guest's book, which applies Luhmann's ideas to the complex realm of occupational safety. Today's guest, Martijn Flinterman, is a sociologist specializing in how organizations deal with safety and the sociology of risk. His advisory work is primarily for the management of Rijkswaterstaat major projects and maintenance, a public agency responsible for the design, construction, management, and maintenance of the Netherlands' primary infrastructure facilities. Martijn contributes to safety literature as an author, reviewer, and active sociological researcher. A lifelong learner, innovative thinker, and dedicated professional with a unique perspective, Martijn contributes fresh viewpoints to teams, challenging norms and driving impactful decisions. He's the author of the book we'll discuss today, Managing Safety in Complexity, Making Working Safely Possible Between Systems That Speak Different Codes. And he joins us from the Netherlands. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is a dense book, and I have so many questions. I'm just going to dive right in and ask, who was Niklas Luhmann?
Yes, excellent question. I'm excited to talk about it, about Niklas Luhmann, because he's a very large figure in German sociology, and I have read a lot of his work. And I felt it was a shame that he wasn't better known across the world. So here we go. Well, first of all, sociology, what is it about? It's about, why do we do this? Why do we actually do what we do? So it's not about me personally, it's about us. And that's a question that Niklas Luhmann was looking at his whole life. He wanted to produce a theory about whole society. And he took 30 years to do that, and he made it. He was happy with it when he finished it in 1998. And it's a very, very gifted individual. He was at the age of 9. He already went to the gymnasium. It's called gymnasium in Germany, but it's actually the highest level high school.
Yes. It's an academic stream high school.
Yeah. And he was 9 years old when he went there, so he was extremely bright. And what happened because of that young age that he started there, that at the age of 15, he was already drafted into the army because he lived in the Second World War, and he every boy in his class, in his exam year, had to go to the war, and also for Niklas. So he really hated the Nazi regime, I should say, because it was full of pathos, it was full of, marching and salutes, and all the things he hated, he had to do there. And why do I tell this? It's because it's very important to understand that we can look in a black and white way at Germany, but this was an extremely sensitive person who was extremely reluctant to participate in the war, but he had to. So, and what's worse is that he lost a good friend of his, a school friend. The boy he sat next to at school, he died when they were in battle together. And from that point on, he said, I could only think in contingencies. So what did he mean? Things can always be different. We can move to accidents also. Accidents are normal for Luhmann. It's normal that accidents happen once in a while, and we shouldn't be too easy in attributing responsibility for them. So that's something I will talk about later. But first, a little bit more on Luhmann. He was drafted after the Second World War, where he was drafted into. He went to study law, and after that he went into the civil service, where he had to deal with all these files and categories and procedures. And he saw, well, actually these things, these files and categories and procedures, they create reality for people in organizations. So the stuff they work with, the categories they use, the procedures they use, well, they determine how they see safety as well. At that time, he wasn't dealing with safety already, but after a while, in 1991, he wrote a book about risk and safety, and so it's important that we know. When I have to say what kind of person he is, Niklas Luhmann, he was an observer of meaning. He was not a moral preacher at all. He stayed away from morality as far as he could. He observed how people give meaning to what they do. And that's the thread in my book, that we have to look how people make sense of their work in safety management. And what he did was describe society from difference. He wasn't at all satisfied with looking just at unity, because he said, oh, well, we can see in the world that things go wrong when we just look at people have to be uniform, people have to be and do the same things. That won't be possible. So we have to look at difference and what makes people unique and what makes society function the way it does. So actually, he was had a lifelong suspicion of grand unities and moral pathos. And he said society is communication. It's all about communication. And we have to, you can shout from the sideline to people, but the message has to fit the code that people speak. And people are part of so many different systems. They can be part of the law system. They can be part of politics. It can be part of organizations, and we have to be extremely careful how to translate messages into the codes that people and systems speak. One interesting fact about Luhmann is the way he worked. He had at his house, he had this filing cabinets with 90,000 pieces of paper in them, and he produced it. He produced it himself. And that was his way to write books. He said, the book writing is done by the filing cabinet. I don't do anything, but that was nonsense, of course. But he wrote the books, but he used everything he thought and everything he read went on a white slip of paper and into his filing cabinet, and he coded these slips of paper so that he could combine them into a new book.
Is this the Zettelkasten method?
Zettelkasten, yes.
I didn't realize he was the one who had invented that.
Yes.
Okay, I know a little bit about that.
Is the inventor of the Zettelkasten method. Yes.
Okay.
And good for you that you know of it, because it's very interesting how he worked. And the Zettelkasten has now been digitalized by the University of Bielefeld, so you can look online and look at all the zettels, all the pieces of paper that he produced. So, and he used them to write 500 publications. So that's really a lot. Yeah. So that's in short who he was.
You're talking about differences. So let's go into paradox. What is the role of paradox in understanding his work and applying it to health and safety?
in safety management, we have a lot of contradictions, and we don't eliminate these contradictions, but we have to work with them. So, for example, more control, if we use more control on people, it can create new risks. So we can get this super systems with, how do you call it, surveillance systems for people that we can see how they work and do they work safely or not. And but these systems, of course, tend to produce byproducts, and people don't feel valued at all if they've been spied upon all the time. So that is one of the contradictions in our work, that we try to do something, we work with people, but almost all the stuff we do has unintended consequences. And that's something that sociology looks a lot at. It's not just Luhmann, it's all different kinds of people. Robert Merton, for instance, who also looked at the unintended consequences of measures. So technological systems often generate unforeseen vulnerabilities. So of course we now have AI, and we already know that AI produces a lot of vulnerabilities and unintended consequences as well. So my friend Carsten Busch shared a document, and in the document he said, "What is that what is that reference there? I've never heard of that paper," and it was made up by AI. So we see this all the time, and this means there's more work to be done for people to correct AI. And of course, AI is used in ways that are not productive at all. Also, so it's interesting to look at these kind of vulnerabilities. And when we increase control through automation or protection or more precision, we create all new failure modes or dependencies that are harder to see or manage. So I think we should be really aware of that. And when we look at procedures, they bring legitimacy, but they also suppress reflection. So systems need these tensions between trust and distrust and order and flexibility in order to function. So that's important. That's why we should look at the paradoxes we see.
So the paradoxes are, they're inherent. They're not something to be avoided. There's something to be aware of.
And what's important, if we look at another person, Mr. Deming, William Edwards Deming, he always said he's known for plan, do, check, act, but that's not what he wrote. He wrote plan, do, study, act. And after him, other people, Deming said, corrupted my method. But it's about that studying those paradoxes and really looking at what happens in your system, instead of saying, okay, check, it works the way I think it should work, we can move on.
Yeah, so that brings me right into the idea of the paradox of learning from exceptions. So you're just talking about if the system is working well, then if we just move on, we're not learning. However, if we look at exceptions, there's some value there.
Yeah. When you read Luhmann, he wrote, "Bad cases make bad laws." So there's a paradox in learning from exceptions. So disasters always trigger tighter controls and longer approval chains and heavier documentation. It feels like the system is learning, but it's the resulting rigidity can create new risks. So systems become less adaptable, and that's always a pity. And we have to really look at where the system observation fails. So exceptions really reveal where the system's observation fails. Luhmann didn't ask what failed or who failed, but he said what had to be true for this to seem normal until it wasn't.
Can you give an example of something that would illustrate
stuff that do I have a quick example about the way we work on the highways with road work during traffic. So it could be because of an incident. It can be that suddenly people say, "Why did we let this happen all this time? Why did people think that would be normal?" And of course, if we go back a longer time, then it was normal not to wear any seat belts. It was normal not to wear any safety harnesses to climb up a scaffold. So we get these improvements along the time. And so Luhmann always said, what had to be true for this to seem normal until it wasn't?
In the book, there are 2 points of view that you describe. One is accident theory and one is the improbably normal theory. Can you explain what those mean?
Yes. So accident theory, it's the one that assumes that systems are normally safe and accidents are deviations. So we have a perfectly fine system. It's working the way it should. And an accident happens now. Well, that's a deviation from normal practice. Probably someone who effed up, so to speak. And that's accident theory. And when we look at the improbable normal theory that Luhmann subscribed to, that says that safe functioning is improbable and must be explained. So Luhmann would ask the question, how is safety even possible amid uncertainty? So what has to be done already to make this work in this factory? It works. It all works fine. How come? And he was really interested in finding out how people work together. What happened at that in the factory to really for it to work that way. So it's a move from analyzing failure to understanding success. And that's also what we see after that, of course, in Safety 2 of Holnagel. He wanted to look at successes more than just at failure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were speaking. That's a basic tenet of newer thinking, but I guess it's not necessarily newer. What do you mean when you talk about engaging with complexity in HSE?
I mean that safety emerges from changing and interconnected systems, and we have to adapt and negotiate and communicate. So systems like law, economy, operations, they often talk past each other, and we have to make sure that they speak together, speak with each other, and really sometimes translate our message into the code they understand. So in the book, I have this example of a government agency that always says, well, safety is not something we compete with. So it must be present all the time. But that can be problematic. It's a moral stance, but it can be problematic because, well, safety also costs money. To work more safely than we do absolutely nothing, or we do something, we have some measures, it costs money. So it's for companies, for private companies, it's important that you save on how much does this cost to work safely in this project, and we have to account for that. So that's what I mean by always these changing interconnected systems. Nothing stays the same, everything floats around, and we have to be sure, we have to talk with each other. What are the new rules and regulations? What are the new what's the current market situation? And we really have to talk about this, and so that we can adapt. We have these long time contracts, for instance, that we really have to work together with companies to involve them into safe work, and we have to make sure that they can do what they promised so many years ago. That's one example of it.
Yeah. So rather than saying, "Man, this is so complicated, there's a regulatory system, there's a legal system, there are social norms, rather than sort of shying away from that, just engaging with it as in admitting this is the way it is. And I suppose that would lead to a constant reevaluation, which sounds exhausting. But what is the way to engage with that, in a way that's practical?
Yeah, we have to keep open the channels between companies and clients and regulators, and maybe don't do it every week, but we have to really talk with these people. We have to talk together to see how to move on. And one of the students of Luhmann always talks about having ethical committees and work groups and all these kinds of venues to talk and to experiment with certain problems and new risk management methods, and to really do this together. And in the Netherlands, we also have this governance code between clients and contractors, and they try to really improve their methods and every time talk about the new risks that are seen, and how can we do this together. So that's
So
important.
it sounds like setting up the structures to allow that communication to happen.
Yeah. It's mostly that the communication channels are open, that you have as you say, a structure that stands and that you can refer back to. This is what we intended. This is how we started, and now we are at point X. How did we move on? How did we adapt and negotiate how to move on?
Okay, I want to go back a little bit where you mentioned briefly categories, and we're talking about meaning and how people make meaning. So what is the inherent danger of categories? And in the book, you give the example of the category safe versus the category not safe. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, every distinction brings blindness. And we all do this. We as people do this, but also organizations, every social system draws distinctions between us and them, between this system and the environment of this system. And we also do this when we work at some topic like safety. So when we declare something safe, we stop looking. We simply assume that it is safe. And I have seen this actually happen long time ago at work. We had this quiz, and people could say, "Is this safe or is this unsafe?" And I was a bit troubled by this quiz because, well, you could discuss a lot about if it was safe indeed, the pictures that you saw, or if they were actually unsafe all the time. So a minor incident. What do we categorize as a minor incident? In the book, I have an example of a tripping hazard, and people trip over a cable. And at one time, it was logged as a minor incident, and there was no one hurt. So people in the head office, they shrugged it off and they said, "Well, minor incident. Who cares? We can move on." But 2 weeks later, the next incident was put into the system, and it had a bigger toll. Somebody broke an arm or something. So that triggered investigation of the cable. And then, of course, the cable was nicely put away, and so no one could trip over it anymore. But how did we come to define it that way? How did we come to see it as, well, it's nothing to be stressed about? So that's something that Luhmann would urge us to look at. Really look at the categories you use, and when, especially when you say, well, we don't have to worry about them no more. So risks always, whenever you put a control in place for a risk, it doesn't mean that the risk disappears. The risk is still there, but there's a control. But that control can fail. So we have to really look at how to categorize these risks. And also what Luhmann said is, do we categorize a risk as an external danger or something that our own decisions caused? And that's a very important point because a lot of the time we say, well, it's something external. It's some guy refused to look before he passed the intersection. Well, it's his failure. Actually, when you went to that place, you could see, well, it's not his fault because he couldn't see. It's a design issue. And then, well, that's really important in safety. And in the book, I also have an example about a bridge that was operated, and a car fell into the water because the car was trapped between the two barriers, and the bridge went up, and the car drove into the water. And the operator couldn't see the spot that the car was in at that moment. So at first, the lawyer said, "Well, it's terrible, and this person people should take his job away and stuff." But you have to look at this exact location to see what could this person see, and he wasn't really at fault. So it's a lot of these things are design issues, and we have to really, really be better in our designs so that people, don't get into serious trouble and get into second victimhood, as Sibby Decker likes to call it. And we have a first victim, and the second victim is the person who caused the accident in the terms of the investigator.
So a lack of incidents does not necessarily mean that it's something we shouldn't look at. There could still be design issues that could be improved, perhaps to prevent potential incidents.
Yes, and you always have to look at, are we happy with this system at the moment? Because you can look at the amount of incidents you have and say, well, okay, once in a while an incident, it's not so bad. Some people do that, some organizations do that, but you have to really seriously study these incidents to look at where can we improve the situation more. How can we make it better? How can we allow for more capacity for the operator?
And I think part of that, other guests have talked about this, is talking to people about their normal work, because they're likely to spot risks that you otherwise, a safety manager can't be everywhere at all times. And there's a risk of managing the wrong risks. What is an example of doing that, and why does it happen, do you think? Or did Luhmann think?
What we often see is that organizations often manage what's visible or what's institutionally comfortable. So an easy example is we all can see if everybody at the construction site wears his hard hat, but is that really the issue here? Or do we have to worry about different things? That's what Luhmann had this term alibi risks. He said these are substitute risks that restore a sense of control. So an example of this is we can divert the highway traffic to protect road workers, but we have to be careful that we don't divert it in an unsafe way for all these people in the small villages. So maybe children cycling to school, or elderly people walking across the road. So we really have to think this through. And of course, this happens a lot, but when you're in a system that only worries about the highway, it's very difficult to also look at the small towns. So that's also an example of where we draw the distinction between our system and the environment. You understand?
I do. I'm wondering, actually, let's find out if I understand, because I'm wondering about, you mentioned a term coined by Drew Ray and his colleagues, which is probative blindness. Is that something that comes into play here?
Yeah, I think what Drew's favorite examples were, I think, audits, inspections, all these processes that look like investigations, but that confirm existing beliefs. So an example in the book is Deepwater Horizon, and that's a report by Andrew Hopkins, safety researcher from Australia. He said hundreds of checks were passed, but disaster struck anyway because the system confused the checking with really seeing. So performing control instead of questioning assumptions. And that's exactly what Luhmann always says about really. Do I observe my own observation? Do I know what I'm looking at, or do I just put a check mark behind this item?
Or perhaps if I'm looking at this, by definition, what am I not looking at?
Yeah,
I think that would
exactly.
be
What is the
part of
blind
it too.
spot? What is the blind spot in my view? Because I choose to look at this subject now.
Okay, I'd like to shift a little bit into Luhmann's view of power. Power is commonly, not just in safety, but commonly understood as control. He talked about power as possibility rather than control. Can you elaborate on that idea?
Yeah, it's a really tough piece he wrote there about Macht im System. It's called. But it's about his idea was that power is a generalized communication medium. That's Luhmann speak for it influences communication. So power stabilizes the expectations and in the system, and it also structures what can be said and what can be acted upon. So we can see in systems that powerful people, when they speak, people listen. And it's not because they feel coerced to do so, but because they want to do what the person says, and because they think, well, it's the purpose of our organization, or I want to work for this person, and so power enhances the communication. It's just something that helps. And so it's important to a distinction between power and coercion, because Luhmann said, well, power is not the domination over other people. It is mainly that someone you want to work for, and someone whose message comes across and really takes care of things, that people want to perform the way that this person wants the work performed. So, and if that is absent, if people say, well, I don't care if he says it, I don't do it anyway, then there's no power. So that's the way to understand this. And yeah,
Yeah, it sounds, that makes me think of two things. One, leadership versus coercion, right? If someone is exhibiting leadership, then people will want to listen to them.
yeah.
And that power is also something that the listener gives to the speaker.
Yeah.
In a sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's also this communication model that I have a drawing of in the book. That Luhmann said, well, communication is only finished when something is done with the message the way it was intended. And so in safety, it means that real authority comes from legitimacy and resonance, and not from command or anything.
So on the flip side of that, tell me, so that the trust, right? Trust is part of legitimacy and true authority. Tell me about constructive distrust. What is it, and how might it be helpful?
Yeah, I thought this was one of the great ideas in Luhmann's work, that we hear so much about trust in management books. Trust is all important. We have psychological safety, and people have to trust the people they work for. And of course, there's a grain of truth in it, but Luhmann said you can always, how do you say it? It can be too much. It can become too much, this trust. If we don't look out, then trust, it can be negligent too. So that people think, well, we trust our coworkers, so we don't have to look when they perform a risky task. It's fine. We trust our workers. And then they wonder, well, they had an accident. How come? Because I always trusted this person, and they can go directly into distrust. Well, that's not Luhmann's way. Luhmann said we have to always be constructively a bit distrusting, and he said actually maybe skeptical is a better word. You have to be a little bit skeptical what happens. Well, okay, my colleague said he has checked this equipment. Did he really? Well, I can check for myself if it's okay. It's constructive distrust. You don't distrust the person because he's a bad person or anything. You say, well, okay, we should check if it's okay. Double check is not bad at all. It's always good to do, providing you have, you want to have the time to do it. So there comes the term capacity. You have to get some capacity to really perform these checks, to really be constructively distrustful. So distrust isn't failure. It's a form of vigilance, I think, and it introduces alternative perspectives, and it also builds some slack into the system. It slows down premature consensus. So that's I think that's a nice perspective. And in the book, I have this example of an unofficial red team in a refinery that challenged assumptions and uncovered some hidden faults. So that friction they produced, that was very functional. It was not defiance or anything. It was really functional to keep the system performing.
Yeah, I mean, trust taken too far is an abdication of personal responsibility or critical thinking. So yes, you can trust your safety leadership, but you still should think for yourself to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was something else that really caught my eye in the book. You talk about regret rewriting narratives and distorting systems. How does regret rewrite narratives and distort safety systems? I know I'm jumping around a bit, but I didn't want to miss this one.
So Luhmann had the term post-decisional regret. It was after accidents, organizations often rewrite their past to protect the present, he said. So regret helps the system appear responsive while defending its self-image. And we see that a lot, don't we? After big accidents, that all these investigation boards pop up and ask questions and write reports, and different things happen as well in organizations because often a scapegoat is sought and found, and then has to leave the organization. All the way while the system stays intact. So the system doesn't have to change because somebody leaves the organization. Yeah, that's really part of that interesting phenomenon that the organization says, well, we regret what we have done, mea culpa, they say to the public, and to the regulator, and we have acted, we have sent this person home, and it won't happen again. So that's obviously maybe a cartoon of what but it happens in some real cases as well. I've seen it. I've seen it in my own organization, and it isn't pretty. It isn't pretty. You want to help your management to really improve and to do the right things, and maybe you can prepare stuff in advance that you say this system we know it's not functioning as safely as we hope it would, but it takes a lot of money to redesign, And when an accident really comes, of course, you do all you can to prevent it from happening. But when an accident comes around, then you can maybe present it to the board. Well, now it's maybe the time to do the redesign that we asked for before, but couldn't happen because of budget constraints. So I thought about it a lot, and actually at Rijkswaterstaat we have this saying, "Dear Lord, give us our daily bread," and in 10 years' time maybe a watershed. So that's because you have to really keep into the public eye this risk of water management. We have to protect our country against flooding. So it's a joke, of course, but something, there's some truth in it as well, that we really say, well, if we get a flooding, we can at least say we exist for this reason at Rijkswaterstaat. We exist for the reason of flood risk management, and we have to get more money to build better flood defenses, and that's what we asked for before. But there wasn't any public budget available, so that's an example of post-decisional regret and rewriting the past to protect the present. I think this happens a lot, that all these committees come around and they within the organization itself, and they write a report and they say, well, it shouldn't have happened, it did anyway, and we did this to improve. And there's always a stop rule. There should be a stop rule, but there isn't. So people say, well, we stop whenever we feel comfortable with what we find. And most of the time that is something that the institution can be satisfied about. Okay, that is a cause that we can live with. You understand? So actually, maybe you have to look deeper, but the organization says, well, okay, leave it with that. That's okay. So I really think there's a lot of ethics as well in safety management, that we really have to do some really have to think hard about it, and to really again go to these other organizations and regulators and stuff to talk about how safe is safe enough. If we want to make it even safer, which we probably want, how can we do this together? What do we need from contractors? What do we need from the regulator? What do we need from politics? That's hard work.
Yeah, and I mean, there are always limited resources as well. Humans are notoriously not very comfortable with uncertainty. So I wanted to talk about that in terms of the harmony bias, which you define as the tendency of well-functioning systems to filter out discomfort, dissent, or redundancy in the name of cohesion. How does this often play out in safety systems?
I think that's the harmony bias is, it's stated, I think, also as the tendency to value cohesion over critical reflection. So we say, well, it's very awkward to ask these questions to people, so maybe we should just move on and take it for what it is. When everything seems fine, in our team, then questions feel disruptive. And it can be for a person really unsafe to ask questions. In Holland, we have the term klokkenluider. I think it's a whistleblower in English. And whistleblowers, it doesn't finish very well for most whistleblowers. They get promoted away or sent away or whatever. So it's really tough. In safety, I think silence is often a risk. And too much trust is also performative, like we have discussed. It can be a signal of loyalty instead of responsibility. So we really must reframe this constructive distrust as contribution instead of as something that should be avoided.
So I have so many more questions, but I'm gonna move forward and say that given that uncertainty is a fact of life in in life and the workplace. How, practically speaking, does one go about designing for uncertainty, or as you phrase it in the book, not knowing?
Yeah, it's exactly that. You can't eliminate all uncertainty, but you can organize it, and that means you can build some temporal slack for reflection. You can practice reflexivities, so you can observe how you define what you find relevant and what you don't find relevant. You can replace perfect knowledge, in inverted commas, with confidence in adaptive processes. And I have borrowed a saying from, I think it's Todd Conklin, but I've changed it a little. Safety isn't the absence of failure, it's the presence of attention. So I feel that we should really be attentive of what we look at, how do we where do we draw the line? What distinctions do we use? Cut people some slack for really studying the system, for really looking at what's the law involved here, or, the law and the regulations. How do companies feel about it if you're a client? Go and talk with them in some client arena. Well, there's so much you can do. Really, it all starts with taking time to reflect on your own work and the way you do it, categories you use, the forms you use, the methods you use. Well, we didn't discuss methods yet, but I have some methods in the book. The from and the STPA and CAST from Nancy Leveson and Eric Holnagel. They're good methods to really perform what Luhmann said, the second order observation. So look at the way you observe your risks.
Okay, so I was going to ask about where you would recommend that safety professionals start, but let's talk about the from and cast, because I think it's a practical implementation of from and cast.
From is Holnagel's method. Yes, it's called functional resonance analysis method. I don't personally do from studies, but I have had them done by contractors, and I was really positive about the result, because they really look at the variation in the system. So and we always have these variations. For instance, at Rijkswaterstaat, we do a lot of road work at night. We do a lot of road work when it's freezing out. So these kind of variations are so important to manage, right? So and from really gives you the tools to look at the work in all its facets, in all types of weather, all types of the inputs that you have, the tools that you have, the capacity that you have or you don't have. So it really opens our eyes to what people have to do, and the way they sometimes also struggle already in the work. So I think it's a really good method, also from a humanistic standpoint, to look at how can we help the people to do their work even better. So yes, I think that these systems, these methods. So Nancy Leveson has this cast. Maybe you can interview Simon Whiteley at some point in time. Simon Whiteley is a consultant who has a lot of experience in using CAST and STPA. And he has all these very nice examples. I can remember a plane crash, not a plane crash, fortunately, but a mishap of Harrison Ford in his plane. And well, it's always a very nice to hear him talk about what really happened at that night, instead of we can all laugh about the celebrity. No, he really shows how hard it was to perform what he performed, and how easy it was actually to do the wrong thing or do the unsafe thing. So that's, I think, these methods are the two methods that I have the most experience with in seeing them being performed and being positive for the people involved, in also showing to the higher ups, to the management, in what conditions do the people have to work here, and how can we make it better for them.
The book it's very dense. It has a lot of good ideas. So if there's someone listening who's thinking, I'm interested in this, how would you recommend, obviously read the book because that is going to give you more depth and context, but otherwise, how would you recommend that they start implementing some of these ideas? Like what maybe an easy or small way that they could change their practice a little?
Yes, I think it's all it all starts with observation and observation of your own work. And I think it works better if you do that in a team, because you can say to yourself, well, I will observe my own work and then see what can be improved. Yeah, okay, you can do it, but where do you find the time, and how do you really take yourself? I don't know how you say, take yourself into account or something. How do you make sure that you really do it? Because there's so much to do. So it's often better to perform this in a team so that other people can look at the way you do things and share some feedback with you. And also, how do you do things together in the team? What kind of distinctions do we draw in our categorization system? Whatever system you use, what kind of distinctions does it use? Maybe safe, unsafe, compliant, non-compliant, and what do these distinctions hide? And I think that's we did it in our team, and you can learn quite a lot of it. Um, and then comes the hard work of changing your system, and that's not always easy, of course, because we have these systems on the market. They're just the way they are, and they're really hard to change. But you can learn something in your own process. If you know that you use these distinctions that hide something, you can you can make an appointment uh, to to use them differently, or to really put put a red mark on them, and say, well, okay, is our distinction now. Maybe we should look at this at some time in the future, because it's a little bit complex what happens here, and this distinction doesn't fit this situation. So I think that is a first step. You have to create in your organization some space for this dissent and reflection, so that people really can think about how they do the work, and also they can speak up about it, because they know it's okay to it's constructive distrust. It's not distrusting their colleagues. And thirdly, we can cultivate some confidence humble confidence to act decisively, while knowing your understanding is always partial. So you can take some actions and you say, well, okay, we're going to do this now, but note, um, this is the knowledge we have at this moment, and we're working on a better knowledge, but we don't have the time to do it now. I've some experience in crisis management, and then you don't have the time to look at every detail. You just have to act in a way that is as safe as possible. But you make a note for yourself. Oh, okay, we acted with this assumption, and we will after today we will make sure we will test our assumption, and we will really also put it down in writing if it's the way that we think it was. So that are some tips to do at work, to apply Luhmann's idea.
If you were magically given the power, where would you focus training for the next generation of safety professionals? Where do you think perhaps there's a lack of training, or what do you think is very important?
Well, lack of training, I think we have a really lot of training already, at least for my own profession, but we can shift it a little bit from control towards what I call reflexive capability. That we really develop some more system thinking. We can help people to get some more sociological literacy into what is this system that we look at this moment? How does it make sense of itself? What are the parties involved? We can give people some skills in observing paradoxes and observing narratives that go around an organization. And we also can comfort with, well, we can make them comfortable with ambiguity and interdisciplinary dialogue. So that's also important, that we also use the knowledge of our colleagues in human factors, for instance, really also the knowledge of the engineers, that they can help us make better designs. By the way, I like the designs of your knives at the company, the slice knives. And that is the thing that we should really look at, that we really improve the interdisciplinary dialogue, that safety is not some sort of silo, but it's really integrated into the organization and talks with engineering and with human factors people, psychologists, people who go to people's homes and talk with them about what they feel about their environment at the moment, and they live next to these highways that we build. So there's a lot of work to do, but we can really help these people to see the whole system.
If you could go back in time to the beginning of your safety career, is there a piece of advice that you might give yourself?
Yeah, well, maybe don't try to engineer certainty, at least. Don't try to go for, well, zero harm. Of course, do the best you can to improve the system, but always be careful of the byproducts that exist and that come around. And I had I learned a hard lesson only a couple of years into my career. I had to perform a risk analysis, and I sent some contractor. I asked him uh, to go on a highway and look for our overpasses and make pictures of some detail of them. And then he came back and he showed me the overpasses, and I was really afraid when I looked at these pictures, because I thought, well, I let the good man get into a lot of trouble because he parked his car just at the edge of the highway and made these pictures. So uh, really, I had to really go to the basis with this guy and tell him about how to do this. And I didn't do it. So that was at the start of my career. And I said, well, oh my goodness, this guy could have had a big accident. And that was for me a really big lesson, to take these people with us and talk with them about the risk that they get into, the stupid work that we let them do, and really think it through before sending somebody into danger.
Good. Yes, unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So obviously there's reading the book, Managing Safety and Complexity. How can our listeners learn more about other topics in our discussion? Has Luhmann been translated to English?
Yes. I must say that in my book there are some references to go to find more about Luhmann's work. Um, uh, there are some books that I would definitely not recommend to readers, because there are some really, really dense and difficult works by Luhmann. But he has he has an introduction to system theory, And that's a really good one if you want to know about his theory and what it's all about. I think he goes into all parts of the theory, is a theory there, but it is at least a little bit easier than a lot of his monographs about risk or the media or the law. You can get lost in his work, and sometimes you have to read some sentences maybe 5-6 times before you understand a little bit what he says. So I think the introduction to system theory is a good way, because it's also it's a series of lectures that he held just for a general audience. So I think people can really, get into it and get a little bit behind this person with his super theory that he wrote. Yeah, and of course there are new people that were inspired by Luhmann. One of my favorite writers is Stefan Kuhl, and Stefan Kuhl has a website, and there he has almost all of his books are there free to be downloaded in some format. So I think that's a very generous thing to do, and he is really he writes for a general audience as well, but he really translates these ideas of Luhmann for the 21st century.
Excellent. And if our listeners want to find you on the web, where should they look?
Well, yes. Physically, I'm based in the Netherlands, and people who visit the Netherlands can drop me a line. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can find me there, MH Flinterman, behind the dash of LinkedIn. And there's only one Martijn Flinterman in the world, so it's not hard to find me. Martijn is with IJ, so you can find me there. My writing, I write a lot of articles on LinkedIn as well. And I have my own website. It's called untersociologen.com. So untersociologen.com. But that link is also on LinkedIn, so you can find it there. And that
yes, and
that has
we'll
all
include
my
these. Sorry, we'll include these in the descriptions as well.
Yeah. Okay.
If
wonderful.
people are, yeah. Well, folks, that is all the complexity we can handle for today, unfortunately. Thank you, Martijn, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider sharing it with someone that might also enjoy it. Remember, sharing is caring. And my thanks to the Safety Labs team for all the hard work behind the scenes. And that's it, folks. Bye for now. This podcast is created by Safety Products Global, the world's leading manufacturer of safety knives. Through our trusted brands, Clever, Slice, and PHC, we empower companies to prevent injuries by providing safer cutting tools for every material and application. Until next time, stay safe.